Been that girl. Been that girl. I already been that girl. I already been that girl.
Don't you do that
God.
with me on it. Clean foot you and make another team.
Get the cash, get the money, but it's been that girl. If you bad, then you know it, better show up, girl. I already been that girl.
I call her Jid.
Jid.
No, you're Jid. Jid?
I already been that girl. Get the cash, get the money, but it's been that girl.
Today is going to be the deepest deep dive to ever deep dive on this channel on one of the most iconic girl groups of all time, Little Mix. When I say this was a girl group, this was the girl group.
How could you not say like that's like, because when you say something's it means like it's feminine and it's like desirable.
This video was very much inspired by Mila Tequila's video on Britney Spears and her many eras. So if you've not watched that video, you were doing yourself a very big disservice. Go watch it like now. I'm being so serious. Like, what are you even still doing here? There's a lot to cover and we don't have any more time to waste. So let's get started. Okay, so Little Mix, oh my gosh, I'm so excited you guys don't understand. Little Mix came to be in 2011 on X Factor the UK. The X Factor is a popular singing competition show that debuted in 2004 and currently runs to present day, with the US version of the show being launched in the early 2010s, both executively produced by Simon Cowell. He is widely known for not only terrorizing the contestants on American Idol, but being the man behind some of the biggest groups of the 2010s, even though he didn't actually create them. By this time, groups had ceased to exist in terms of popularity, and there was a really big gap in the market to cater to young teens, specifically teenage girls. A year prior, One Direction was also formed on X Factor UK and dominating the charts, but there was a need for the girl group version of them to really shake things up. Like most groups from the 2010s, they auditioned alone.
The windows out your car. Yeah. I wanna hold your head. Your voice is crazy, yo. Make me feel like I'm the only girl in the world.
But fate brought them together. No, actually, it was Kelly Rowland.
She should be here, and she should be here. That is strong, vocally. Really? Abso-freaking-lutely. It's about being the next generation and discovering something new. Of course.
She's clearly the most intelligent person on earth. This video is forever burned into my brain for the rest of all time, and it needs to be taught in history class. When they first banded together, the first name they came up with was actually Rhythmix. Interesting idea. They had the right idea to change it because they would have gone absolutely nowhere with a name as diabolical as that. Honestly, the only reason they changed it was because that name was already taken and trademarked by like a children's music charity with the exact same name, and the girls were not having this. They hated the name Little Mix at first, but we have to take our wins anyways. They competed every single week on the show, and they were actually the first group in history to win.
The winner of the X Factor 2011 is Little Mix.
The winners of X Factor were to get a recording contract with Simon Cowell's record label, Psycho Entertainment. And the first song they released right after the show was Cannonball, and like Kelly Clarkson, a moment like this, they hated it. Cannonball instantly shot up to #1 on the UK singles chart, making it their first #1 single. And honestly, do you know how insane it is to have your debut single go #1? Let's get into their first era, DNA. While they were set up for success with their debut album, in comparison to the Psycho Entertainment cinematic universe, theirs wasn't the best one, but it's okay, it only goes up from here. DNA was released on November 19th, 2012, and since it was their debut album, they were still trying to figure out their sound, and it was very reminiscent of the electronic dance pop sound of the early 2010s. The singles of DNA are so good. They really came out the gate fighting for their lives. The singles were Wings, DNA, Change Your Life, and How You Doing. They came out with their lead single Wings at the end of summer, so we're talking like late August 2012.
Mama told me not to waste my life.
This was pop excellence, and honestly, it was the perfect choice for their debut single. With them coming out the gate with Wings, it really set the tone for what Little Mix would be perceived as going forward, a close-knit, women-empowering, inspiring girl group. The single was a smash hit, going #1 on the UK singles chart, making it their second #1 single, and it was charting high internationally. This was the first official music video for the girls to be introduced to the world with, so they had to make a serious statement here. The best way I could describe this era would be 2010's campy fun, even down to the crazy hair colors, and this music video showed just that. It had an industrial concept with the girls each having 3 different outfit changes to show off their individual styles, which was very 2013 vibes. Even though there were a lot of choreographed dancing scenes, most of them were cut from the final version that was eventually released. My favorite part of the video is when they're dancing with the chairs, which is very inspired from Britney's Stronger music video. This video took nearly a full day to shoot, with them having to do constant retakes of the choreography as the girls weren't really used to this hectic work schedule, but they still had a very good time doing it. As much as I love the video for its bright colors and patterns, it looks like it was edited using iMovie and nothing else. What is this intro? The girls performed Wings in their set list at their first Capital FM Jingle Bell Ball for that year. So this was one of their first few really important performances that they would have that would really solidify what people think of them as a girl group. You know me, I love a good title track, so obviously DNA is my favorite song on the album. DNA might have been the second and less successful single, but it is the superior one. I'm sorry, I don't make the rules here. But clearly I'm the only one that thought that, because it peaked at #14 on the Bubbling Under Hot 100. We were still having fun enjoying good music in 2012, so I don't understand the reason for that. However, it did debut at #3 on the UK singles chart, so it did not go unnoticed. This video had a completely different direction and essence to it, as it was a lot darker and ominous to match the darker tone of the single, so we had a clear budget to work with here. This video is where we got a little creative direction with the murder mystery aspect of it. It has the girls as female assassins who kidnap a man, and at the end of it have a whole kidnapping plan in a secret room filled with maps and clippings. These are some of my favorite looks from the girls outfit wise, especially Jade's, but the girls actually pissed me off here. It's been 12 years. Where's part 2? They were doing the Lady Gaga and Beyonce telephone bid, but we didn't like it then, so what was the reason? DNA, the album, officially comes out and it's an instant success. They had star features on it like T-Boz and Missy Elliott. To be able to get them on your debut, if that's not excellence, I don't know what is. With the UK being their home country, a lot of their success was catapulted instantly there, with it going #3 on the charts, but it also did debut at #4 in the US, so it was giving international gals. The album received pretty positive reviews for it being a really clean-cut, polished pop album. It was a very upbeat dance pop album with little hints of R&B in there, but it was very clear that the main demographic was teenage girls, as it had a very empowering essence about it that touched on things like friendship, relationships, and struggles. Besides the single, some of my favorite songs on the album are Pretend It's Okay, Make You Believe, and Red Planet. Going Nowhere also gets a shout out because we got rapper Leanne.
I'm sick of dragging you up, all you do is pull me down. I wish you good luck, cause now I ain't around.
The label tried to make her rock this half-shaved mohawk thing to give her a kind of Rihanna look, to really give her an edge in the group, as if her skin color wasn't enough. The DNA era was very cute and bubbly fun, and it was also Little Mix's relatable era. Their fashion sense during this era was very cute, girly 2010s core. They were rocking a lot of bright hair colors, which was very popular, as most pop stars were doing the same, like Rihanna, Katy Perry, and Nicki Minaj. They were wearing lots of patterned baggy pants, suspenders, and sometimes quirky outfits out in the streets. The budget for their outfits were not in existence, so to the Brits, their outfits were kind of all over the place, but at least Jade stayed consistent with her bow tie top. By this point, there was clearly a new girl group on the block, and comparisons between her and the Spice Girls ran completely rampant, with people calling them the predecessors to the Spice Girls. Little Mix was everywhere at this point. They were on various magazine covers, and they also found success in Eastern countries like South Korea. They loved Little Mix over there. Their songs would chart high there and even be covered in Korean singing competition shows during this time because they were so loved there. Right after the album dropped, they go on their first tour, the DNA tour. They stayed pretty close to their home country, with them touring England, Scotland, Wales, and North Ireland. The setlist had most of the songs on DNA and some song covers they did like Bootylicious, No Scrubs, and E.T., and they sounded great doing it. The tour was a mix of theaters and small arenas with about 20 dates over a span of about a month to kind of test the waters on what the demand would be for them. The tour was honing in on the relatable vibe they had going on, kind of giving fresh off the streets approachable and kid friendly, so it was kept very intimate and simple. There wasn't a lot of funding for the tour in terms of stage setup, lighting, and overall logistics, so the girls would do their own hair and makeup for the shows because they didn't have a team on hand during it. The looks of the DNA tour consisted of coordinated two-piece sets with patterned stripes, crop tops, baggy jeans for a 90s look, and leather two-piece sets. Perry also rocked pastel purple hair similar to hers in the Change Your Life music video. Speaking of, Change Your Life and How You Doin' were the last two singles of the era and are the weaker singles to me personally, but they moved me in different ways. I personally prefer How You Doin' because it has that 90s-esque sound to it that makes it so fun. I would give it a 6.5, but because of all the fun hair colors in the music video, it gets 2 points, so now it's an 8.5 out of 10. Enough of that. Let's get into the Salute era. The Salute era is where I personally officially became obsessed with Little Mix. Recording for this album went on while they were on the DNA tour, which would become the norm for them moving forward. The girls wanted to go for a more R&B dance sound this time around, which is how Salute ended up sounding drastically different from their debut. It's also important to note that by 2013, the music industry was shifting to a more moody R&B and trap-infused type of music, with popular albums like Beyonce's Self-Titled, Bangers, Take Care, and The Weeknd becoming incredibly popular. The era kicks off with the release of their lead single, Move. It was evidently clear that this era was bigger and better than their first. I absolutely love the music video for Move. It's a top 3 from them. Argue with the Wall, I'm Right. They look a lot more polished and mature here and pretty much ditched the girl next door image for a more grown-up one to represent them being in their young 20s now. But it didn't stray too far away from being teen friendly. The choreo was way more sharp and intricate than anything they had done before, especially Leanne's hit move. Yeah, 12-year-old me was busting that move left and right all over my house. They would upload behind the scenes footage and dance rehearsal videos for their music videos for fans to enjoy, and I watched them religiously as a kid. This music video would kind of set the tone for what the world would expect from Little Mix in terms of their capabilities as a girl group. Everyone knew they could sing exceptionally well, but dancing too? Oh, be very afraid when you see the girls walking down the hallway. A month later, they dropped the album and it was a huge success, going number 4 in the UK and number 6 in the US. We only accept top 10s for the girls. The budget was there for this era. They were doing press everywhere. They went to Australia for X Factor. They also did some US promo going to X Factor USA, The Wendy Williams Show, and The Late Show with David Letterman. It was getting absolutely crazy. With them becoming more famous, a lot more attention came to their personal lives, especially Perry's. There were multiple times where people would try to make her the leader of the group, but she would constantly shut that nonsense down, but it didn't stop people from taking an interest in her personal life. Because it was around this time that she started dating fellow X Factor and equally as famous castmate, Zayn Malik. These two together was one of the biggest power couples the UK had, with them both being in the biggest groups during that time. All eyes were on them. One Direction was huge during this time and their fan base was very much in love with the boys. Perry was constantly having to fight off 15-year-old girls because they were convinced she was taking their man. Either way, they were constantly talked about. After a year of them dating, they would go on to get engaged, further cementing them into that power couple status. Later that year in December, they announced the Salute Tour and planned a whole North American leg of it. With their team beginning to push them into the US market, the girls were told to flirt with some higher executives to help them push even further, and when they refused, things started to backfire. Shortly after them announcing the North American leg of the Salute Tour, it was then canceled due to them needing needing to work on their third album, which was absolute BS because the demand was very high for them in the US and their songs were charting, so timing wise that just didn't make any sense. This could have been a mixture of Little Mix standing their ground, and they also completely scrapped their initial third album that was going to come out, which is why they canceled the North American leg of their tour. And also with that, Fifth Harmony was just starting to become big in the US and their team didn't want to push them and Fifth Harmony in the same market. And it's honestly a shame because this would be the beginning of Little Mix being promoted only internationally and never in the US, so their presence in the US from here on out would just start to dwindle over time. I don't want this entire video to be about Little Mix's lack of promo in the US. I just want to focus on the fun and the music, so we're just going to keep it at that. They also released the promotional singles These Four Walls, Nothing Feels Like You, Towers, Stand Down, and See Me Now to further promote the album. I absolutely love this album for the fall and winter season, so it can only be played at certain times of the year. The deep cuts on this album need to be recognized as well. Boy, the acapella version.
Forget that boy, you're not a bad boy, good enough for you. You're holding back tears in your eyes, bad boy, wanna fight. I never see him fighting for you.
This video had me in such a chokehold. I've watched it at least 100 times. But vocally, Competition is their best song. Look at the material. I would say it's third or fourth in terms of favorites on the album. This album was a significant change from their debut as it had a lot more darker production and slower pace songs on it that derived from R&B. Little Me, their second single, comes out and it doesn't do as well as Move, but it was still very successful in the UK, reaching number 22. The video was shot completely in black and white and had a stripped down tone to it to make it even more sincere and heartfelt. Little Me is one of their best women empowerment songs, even though they made a whole album about feminism. We'll get into you later. After this, they're touring again, but this time it's for the Neon Lights tour, which they opened with Fifth Harmony for Demi Lovato. This was one of the few times they would tour in the US, but it was never for their own headlining show. Don't piss me off. While on the tour, they released Word Up as a single for the charity Sport Relief, and without even trying, it goes number 6 on the charts, which really speaks to their star power at the time. Salute, the final single of the album, drops and it absolutely smashes on the charts, going platinum in the UK. You're gonna hear me say this the entire video, but I love this song. They went extra hard in the choreo for this song, and up to this point, this was their best dance break yet. It's some of their best work, honestly. And yes, I studied the choreography when I was 12, and yes, I still remember it. Single comes out, and 2 weeks later, they're on tour again for the Salute tour. There was a higher demand and budget for this tour as they were performing only at arenas, and the shows were completely selling out. They had a lot more intricate outfits on stage, including these, which I still don't understand. Why would you do that? They had more wardrobe changes, a lot more backup dancers. The theme was a lot darker as most of the outfits they wore were some variation of black vinyl. Overall, they just completely stepped it up. It was no longer just a concert. They were giving a show now. The choreography was absolutely just next level, and the energy was higher than they'd ever had before. I mean, they had confetti falling from the ceiling. If that doesn't scream money, I don't know what does. You'd think they get a break after this, but you'd be wrong. A week after the tour wraps, they then do a set at the Summertime Ball as a supporting act, which was one of the biggest music festivals in London. They looked so good here. Their outfits were more coordinated than ever, and is probably my favorite onstage look from them during this era. Now let's enter the Get Weird era. There was supposed to be a third album that wasn't Get Weird, and it was supposed to be a full-fledged R&B album as they played around with those sounds on Salute, but their label were a bunch of losers and they scrapped the whole thing. Little Mix during this time was very afraid of getting dropped by their label, so they wanted to stay in everyone's good graces. They didn't want to shake the table too much, which is how we ended up with the sounds of Get Weird. The era officially begins with the release of the single Black Magic. The single was originally supposed to be dropped on May 26, but it was pushed a week forward due to it being leaked online, but what can you do? The music video was directed by Director X, and it had a completely different vibe than ever before. It had the girls playing teen school kids that are nerdy and unattractive, and they do this ritual thing that turns them into goddesses, and they go around school partying, and they wreak havoc on a mean girl that was rude to them when they were nerds. While this video was received very well, I do think it regressed Little Mix's image a bit to cater to the young audience they had. We kind of went from the darker and more mature sounds of Salute to the teen pop and colorful tones of Black Magic, making it very kid-friendly, which is exactly what the label wanted. The girls have also implied that they're not the biggest fans of Black Magic, specifically Jessie, who was the most vocal about it. She really hated that song. And frankly, I did too. It is the only song of theirs that exists that I do not have saved, so me and the girls see each other here. It was just clearly catered to the fast-growing but very young audience they had. It was just a bit odd considering the girls were in their young 20s now, so you would think their image would be getting even more mature instead of doing just a complete 180. I mean, clearly it worked. Black Magic was an international hit, and it is their only music video to have over 1 billion views on YouTube, so everyone in the world knew who Little Mix was at this point. They were performing this song day in, day out. You could not see them anywhere without performing it. They got invited to perform at Capitol's Summertime Ball yet again to perform the song. They also did BBC Radio 1 Live Lounge, which their performances on this platform would make them known for it because their covers would always go viral. A month later, they perform it on a date of Taylor Swift's 1989 tour and then do the Kids' Choice Awards the next day. When I say they were booked and busy, I mean that. Later on, it was announced that Zayn and Perry broke off their engagement, which made headlines worldwide. This didn't make much of an impact on the era until Glory Days, which we'll talk about later. Second single, Love Me Like You, comes out and it has a more 60s doo-wop inspired sound and music video. This definitely showed that the era was playing around with a lot more different sounds rather than just sticking to one thing. This song, however, having that retro essence to it, on the surface it's kind of giving teenage puppy love, but if you actually listen to the lyrics, it's kind of pushing the pen in terms of mature content. Just listen to this one line in the song. The girls were getting grown. I was here for it, especially because originally this song was called F Me Like You, but they then changed it to Love Me Like You because kids. The album comes out and it's another international success, breaking the record for the longest charting album for a girl group in the UK. This album had a lot more pop elements than Salute, and it had a more colorful tone to it that kind of gave it a youthful feel. I won't lie, that song makes me get up and bust a move. While the sounds of the album weren't pushing boundaries in terms of maturity, the lyrical content of the song was way more mature than we had ever heard from the girls before. It was kind of playing on innuendos of grown behavior rather than being super in your face about it. This isn't one of my favorite albums by them, but it served its purpose. The Get Weird era is the beginning of their label forcing them to do features with male artists to make their singles perform better, even though the original version is 10 times better. So we're gonna start with Secret Love Song with Jason Derulo. There was no reason to have that man on the original single. Do I have beef with Jason Derulo? Yes, I do. Originally, the video featured a same-sex and an interracial couple, as the girls pictured this video to highlight the struggles of an LGBTQ couple. But that entire video was scrapped, and the release version has them walking the streets separately and Jason Derulo doing the same, which was clearly done really quickly. This is further proof that their label were a bunch of idiots, and Little Mix should have had complete control over their vision. This song has come to be known as a gay anthem, with fans listening to it to help them deal with their own sexuality. And the girls would go on to dedicate this song to the LGBTQ community and would often have the pride flag in the background of their performances for it. 20 days later, they performed Black Magic at the Brits that year. This was their first time ever performing at the Brits, and it's pretty much like the Grammys for the UK, so this was a very important performance for them. The performance opens up with a tribal setting, including hundreds of male dancers wearing masks and holding fire torches. And the girls drop down in a massive colorful school while wearing green hoodie crop tops and bedazzled black shorts. The outfits weren't super intricate, but it was their first performance, so that's to be expected. It then goes into Perry's first verse of the song.
Birdie ain't got time. Here's the answer.
This sort of dramatic intro and a big pause and dance break in between the first verse would become kind of their signature performance style, which they would become known for. Another thing that they would become known for when it came to live performances was high energy choreographed spectacles. This performance was on another level. They had multiple dance breaks and were moving all across the stage in sync and were outshining their backup dancers while also singing the entire song live with minimal backtrack. Little Mix set the standard not just for girl group performances, but performances in general, because every single one they did from here on out was just top tier and couldn't be matched. They were those girls. Almost immediately after this performance, the girls then go on their Get Weird tour, and as you can imagine, things just kept getting bigger and bigger. They upped the stage theatricality, there were more dancers, they had an even bigger stage to be able to create a wider range for the show. The costumes were absolutely insane for this tour. The budget was clearly there. They ditched the dark tones for more sparkly two-pieces and mesh glitter bodysuits, which were more risque and revealing than their previous tour outfits. And even the outfits for this era were completely different. The color schemes this time around were more reds, floral patterns, bright colors. They kind of just had an overall bohemian vibe going on. They gave more mature and coordinated outfits, especially to red carpet events, but it was still very girly to match the era. Hair, the final single, was released, and it was also pushing that sexual border with its playful and risque lyrics.
'Cause he was just a and I knew it. Got me going mad sitting in this.
The music video had the girls at a sleepover in a huge house just having fun and doing cute girly activities. The music video was received very well, and it's one of their most viewed videos on YouTube. And clearly the numbers on their videos were getting so high, so it really just shows that each era just kept getting more successful than the last. I absolutely love this song. Sean Paul was for sure the perfect fit for it to add to that summer vibe that it had, just making it super timeless, and he's the only male feature we actually appreciate here. Now we're gonna get into their biggest era yet, Glory Days. Did I film this on a different day? Yes. Am I getting a migraine because I've been talking so much? Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. But the show must go on. This was the era where Little Mix was on top of the world, and each single was an event. It begins with a bang with the lines that would define this era.
This is a shout out to my ex.
The first single, Shout Out to My Ex, was released, and it was like no other Little Mix song we'd ever had. They were no longer trying to get out of that kid-friendly image that they had had. They were now completely out of it, and the music showed that during this era with its amped up appeal and its womanly aura. Even down to the outfits for this era, their looks were a lot more cohesive and mature. It was giving grown energy with them wearing deep V-cut pantsuits, rocking sleeker hairstyles. This, however, did not come without controversy. Critics left and right were calling them strippers and overly sexual, and it's like, did you want them up there in onesies? This era, Leanne was also rocking a lot more Afrocentric protective hairstyles like jumbo twists, and she ate with these looks. She clearly had some black stylists for once. So the music video for Shout Out comes out, and drama was through the roof. Everyone at this point knew that Zayn and Perry had broken off their engagement and were no longer together, and he was now with supermodel Gigi Hadid. In the song, Perry says, "I hope she's getting better. Hope she ain't faking it like I did." The articles and news outlets were swarming saying Perry was shading Zayn, and I was here for the chaos. The girls were fighting. One thing I do need to point out is Shout Out to My Ex deserves a Grammy. It is probably top 5 Little Mix singles of all time, and if you disagree, let me ask the audience. Thank you. They looked absolutely gorgeous in the music video. It really represents Glory Days at its core, tropical pink. And Perry's look with the stars under her eyes and the French braids is very 2016 Coachella coded. And best believe Perry was all over the mood boards on Pinterest for music festivals during this time. Everyone was obsessed with this look. Right after, they then returned to X Factor to perform Shout Out and do other performances to promote the song. In the next month before the album, they would release the promo singles You Gotta Not, F You, Nothing Else Matters, Touch, which would later become the second official single, Nobody Like You, and Down and Dirty. The day after Down and Dirty, the album officially comes out and it was a completely different sound than we were used to from the girls. There were a lot more sexual innuendos and references than in past work, especially in songs like Beep Beep. And some that were just completely out there, like Freak. They were in their woman era, okay? But other than that, the album itself had tropical house influences, giving it a bright summer vibe to it to match the aesthetic of the album visually. This is my second favorite cover art from the girls, but this one has absolutely nothing on the platinum edition. On the album, they also included the Reggaeton Lento remix with CNCO, and I absolutely love this song. They looked so good in the music video, and I have to remind myself that it's not their song. So the album comes out and it's their biggest album up to this point, and let me explain to you everything this album accomplished just so you can get a very clear picture here. It sold about 100,000 units in the first week, spent 5 weeks at #1, went top 30 in the US, goes 3 times platinum in the UK, became the first album by a girl group to reach 2 billion streams on Spotify alone, and it broke the record for the longest charting album by a girl group on the UK albums chart. I need y'all to understand just how big they were at this point. They were untouchable. Touch is then pushed as the second official single, and it's another worldwide smash hit for the girls. The music video is released a month later, and the concept was very different from the last, with it having a colorful maze where the girls dance with their male dancers, and it's their most risque choreo yet. They also did Touch at the Kids' Choice Awards, where they also won for Favorite Global Music Star. They also went back to X Factor to perform Oops with Charlie Puth for the 5th year anniversary of Little Mix winning the show. So this performance was a huge deal. Again, the girls' songs without features were always better. They come with the Touch remix featuring Kid Ink, and there was literally no need for this. And I'm not exaggerating, it quite literally did not help chart-wise. Either way, this was their most successful era in their career. They were on top of the world here. Their touring schedule for this era was absolutely insane, and you'll see why. They opened for Ariana Grande on the Dangerous Woman World Tour for the American leg of it, and the set list itself was pretty short, but the people were still very excited to see them. Guess who else was opening for that tour? A pre-Jaguar Miss Victoria Monet. Wow, you can really just feel how much excellence was just in the room there. This now takes us to what would become one of the most iconic Little Mix performances of all time. Shout out to my ex at the Brits. If we're being very honest, this performance was set up for failure. They literally flew in from the US from the Dangerous Woman World Tour. They only had 2 days to put this performance together, and they were having problems with their costumes and audio the entire time they were rehearsing. This was some kind of miracle. It opens up with them literally being carried in chairs like the queens they are. Remember how I said they had a signature performing style with dramatic pauses? Yeah, they did it here again, but way better. It was probably their most extravagant global performance yet. They had 100 dancers on stage with so many moving parts, intense choreo, and all while singing live. I still get chills every single time I watch this performance. It's so good. It has been 7 years since this performance, and I'm gonna say it, no one has topped them. They also won their first award that night, so it was just an amazing one for them. They then go back to the Dangerous Woman World Tour, and they drop No More Sad Songs as a 3rd official single. I love this music video so much because it's just very laid back and lighthearted, and it shows the girls just having a good time. After this, they then go straight into the Summer Shoutout Tour, which was a month-long summer summer tour across the UK. They were also doing music festivals during this time. Their team for sure hated them. They dropped everything to do the BBC Radio 1's Big Weekend and their infamous 2017 Capital FM Summertime Ball performance, and they went even bigger for this set. 5 days after they start the tour, Power, the final single, comes out. I'm literally not exaggerating when I say I do not remember what my life was like prior to the release of Power. May 26, 2017 and before? There's just nothing up here. The fact that Power did not chart in the US just shows how very, very dumb we are. Not me, but everyone else. And I mean that with my whole chest. The version of Power featuring Stormzy was the one that was released as the official single, and it's one of the only songs they have with male features that I actually kind of like. The music video matches just how over the top the song is sonically. The girls rock so many colorful and out there looks, also including LGBTQ+ members. They then went back to X Factor for the finale where they performed Power, and their energy towards Simon is actually really hilarious. They clearly hated that man. They also brought out CNCO for Reggaeton Lento. All this was going on during their summer shoutout tour, which then coincided with their Glory Days tour. So, let's talk about the Glory Days tour. Every tour, they just stepped it up and made it bigger and bigger, but this was the biggest tour they had done yet. There were a lot of metallic elements on the tour, specifically their outfits. My favorites are the glitter Western ones they wore, and we have to mention how tight their harmonies were for Wings. Oh, I just love everything about it. We also got the black leather cutout fits and the Power choreo. My favorite part of the set is when they performed Private Show. There was just something about that song live. Their vocals were probably the best they had ever been on tour, which is crazy because they were tired. They then do No More Sad songs with silver metallic outfits with huge white feather wings, later changing into black shirts with the word X on them, ending with Shout Out to My Ex. They really just stepped it up for this tour. While they were on tour, they performed at the One Love Manchester concert held by Ariana Grande after the tragic bombing that happened during her Dangerous Woman World Tour, and it was just one of those performances that was probably the biggest highlight of their career because they were the biggest girl group in the world showing support for such a devastating event, but they really just brought light and love to the concert. This was their longest touring schedule yet, so when the tour wrapped, the girls were tired and they said, "Y'all ain't seeing me." So we didn't until the LM5 era. The girls had enough of their flop label, so this era was in the middle of them switching to Sony Music, which completely ruined the promotion for it. This also explains why the sales for LM5 compared to Glory Days was significantly lower. This was also the first album where the girls had full creative control. They not only co-wrote most of the songs on the album, but they're also credited as executive producers. Jade and Leanne especially took the reins on this album. They wrote on a lot of the songs on it, which is why it's the album with flavor. This one was for the black folk. And you can really hear that change in a lot of the songs on the album as it had more trap and R&B influences rather than super bright pop songs like American Boy. That truly is one of my favorite songs of all time. I listen to it at least a couple times a week. Sue me. I like good feeling music. The girls named the album LM5 since many of the fans would refer to the upcoming album as LM5 as there wasn't an official name released yet, but it's honestly very fitting. This era was heavily inspired by the Me Too movement from the previous year and their own experiences being women in the music industry. The first single released for the era was Woman Like Me with Nicki Minaj, and there was actually a lot of disagreements over it being the first single, as the girls really wanted Strip to be the first single as it was a clear body positivity women empowerment song. But their label shelved that idea because Woman Like Me was more commercial, and they were right. The single ended up doing really well. This was the start to a lot of conflict between the label and the girls, which would lead to them splitting up months later. The music video has them attending an etiquette school that reinforces stereotypes of how women should behave, dress, and carry themselves, but in the end, they challenge those norms by acting out of what's expected of them to represent how strong and resilient they are. I find this video hilarious considering the fact that it's very obvious that Nicki and the girls were not even in the same country when this this was filmed, hence Nicki via green screen. The video did get critical acclaim, with MTV saying it was their best music video to date, and it really showed the growth Little Mix had up to this point. It would also cause a little bit of drama later that year, which was just completely left field for them. It came out the exact year of the infamous Cardi B and Nicki Minaj beef. Yeah, that one. While Nicki and Cardi are tussling on Instagram Lives, Cardi goes, "That Little Woman Like Me song, yeah, they came to me first." Perry would respond with this Instagram post saying that they wanted Nicki on it. Cardi then came back with a demo of the song on her phone. It was just madness. Me as a mixer, I was just sitting here like, now why am I in it? Either way, it was very entertaining. They also did Woman Like Me at the EMAs with Nicki, and they looked absolutely gorgeous. The sleek pantsuit is one of my all-time favorite looks from them. It was giving, we've carried the industry on our back, so let me remind you who the we are. The Era promo started getting a little bit messy at this point, as it was right in the middle of them switching record labels, which completely ruined the promotion of the album. Weeks before the album, they dropped 3 promo singles: Joan of Arc, Told You So, and The Cure. Joan of Arc was actually supposed to have a music video released, and it was all filmed and ready to go, but it was never actually released to the public. This was a heinous crime because the bits that were leaked online were so good. It makes me sick. One day before the album release, the girls do a nude photo shoot called the Strip Campaign to help promote body positivity, which showed insults on their bodies the girls had been called all throughout their career. It was a really powerful campaign that really resonated with their fans and women around the world to all love the body that they're in, and it actually started the trend Strip with Little Mix. They received mostly praise from this campaign, especially from other female artists, but yet again, it was controversial, especially with the British journalist Piers Morgan that accused them of using to sell records. They couldn't do anything without being scrutinized, whether it was what they were wearing, how they were dancing, or even the lyrics in their songs, which shows just how much misogyny is in the industry. But that didn't stop the girls, because the day after, not only do they release the album, they also dropped the music video for Strip, which highlights women of all races, ethnicities, and body sizes. And it's probably the best video in their discography, which they actually co-directed. They also released a music video for More Than Words with Camille, a longtime songwriter and collaborator for the girls. For some reason, people don't like this song, but I am not one of them. Why don't y'all get the vision? LM5 was meant to be a visual album first, which is why there were so many creative visual concepts for this era, and they really set out to have it make a big mark on the American market, as they not only went to America to record it, but they clearly had the US in mind when creating it, with its genre bending and leaning more into R&B and hip-hop sounds. The album itself was way more mature than any other Little Mix album before. In the past, they were always teetering on innuendos, but this time around, they were explicitly clear. The girls were f***ing, and they were doing it quite frequently. They had songs like Motivate,
Where he moves and I gave and want him to dive in my ocean.
and Notice, which were songs all about getting it on. But even more than that, the sounds of this album were incredibly different. They played around with more funkier elements of 90s hip hop and R&B, especially on the song Love a Girl Right. But throughout, the main theme of this album was women empowerment at its core from beginning to end. And it is for sure their best album, and it's also my favorite one by them. I mean, it is the reason that the girls are always on my Spotify Wrapped every single year. Critics view this album as their most cohesive and mature project, so they really did their big one here. After some months of performances, Think About Us is now the second single with Ty Dolla $ign. This song is on a whole other level of excellence that I cannot talk about because I will rant about it for another 20 minutes. But I will say I want justice for Think About Us. It should have gone #1. Don't piss me off. They performed Think About Us for the Brits Are Coming performance, and it is for sure my favorite performance from this era. I love every single one of their outfits here. They all looked so good. A month after, they go back to the Brits, and their outfits were so good. This was probably their best look yet. This one was especially important because the show had become synonymous with Little Mix and their amazing performances, and each year they just kept getting bigger and better. They did Woman Like Me for the show, and like their previous performance, performances, it was a whole spectacle. They had their signature pauses in between verses. They also had a million dancers on stage like usual, super intense choreo. Like at this point, their only competition was themselves. They brought out Miss Banks for a verse in the performance, and they did one of their best dance breaks here. It was everything you could expect from a Little Mix performance and more. A couple months later, they released the single Bounce Back, and this was meant to be their first real push in the US since Get Weird. They were actually doing some promo in the US on The Late Late Show with James Corden, and the sound of the song had huge hit all over it, with New Orleans Bounce being huge that year. But again, because of their lack of promo in the US, it didn't really go anywhere. The music video is really fun though, because the girls are lifelike dolls in a dollhouse, and I especially love Lay Ann's cheetah outfit. I just really love the music video. It's super colorful and out there. They then go on the LM5 tour, and it was just as big, if not bigger than their last. This tour was stepped up times 10 and was unlike anything they had done prior. The outfits were better. The choreo was insane. The set changes in between acts were elaborate. Everything they could possibly do to make it their best tour ever was done here. The LM5 tour was separated into 6 acts. Act 1 opened with a news broadcaster introducing the show as the LM5 Takeover, and it goes into the national anthem. This tour was also responsible for some of their best choreography, like the Salute choreo, which they go super hard on, and it's one of my favorite looks from this tour. And power for this tour was just on a whole other level. Oh, I get chills every time. Act 2 had Wasabi, and I love the setup here. It's just completely over the top and extravagant. They were those girls. The performance of Secret Love Song on this tour genuinely makes me cry. They look amazing, and the vocals are just too good. Act 3 ends with The Cure while they're being risen in the middle of the arena on a tiny triangle platform that looks like it could collapse at any moment, but they're still serving amazing vocals. It then goes into a seamless transition into Act 4 from the We Are the Activists interlude, where they then pop up with a whole new set concept of fences and a brand new backdrop, and this is my absolute favorite section of the tour. Act 4 was just back-to-back excellence with the Joan of Arc set design and costume change. I don't know how they made Wings even better on this tour, but they somehow did. Shoutout was also high energy and had amazing crowd interaction. Act 5 had the reggaeton lento and the Think About Us choreo while wearing custom-made black bodysuits with fire patterns. Just another top-tier look on this tour. And the set ended with Touch, which was just the perfect ending for it. I'm sure you can tell this is my absolute favorite tour from them, and I will never forgive them for not coming to America. They also released the LM5 tour film to theaters. Absolutely iconic. This is such LM5 behavior. The next album that came out was Confetti, but the time period between LM5 and Confetti gets a little messy because the girls were booked and busy, so pay close attention from here. The girls had probably the most downtime they had ever had in their career, so they were giving fans a lot of cute personal content to keep up with them. They did a little series on YouTube called the Mix It Up series, which was a 7-episode series that was released during the summer of 2019. It followed the girls doing various activities like painting, cooking, and even dog training. It was nice to see them do things together outside of just Little Mix stuff and just have fun as friends. And best believe I watched every episode as it dropped. This was my reality TV for that summer. A month after the series wrapped, Jessie released the documentary Odd One Out, where she talked about her struggles with self-love and the abuse she got from people online constantly bullying her, and how it affected her mental health during her time with Little Mix. It was a really raw and emotional documentary that showed just how much she went through behind the scenes and how much it had affected her, which would end up changing the landscape of Little Mix as a whole later. The following year in March, Little Mix dropped the music video for Wasabi, a fan favorite on LM5, and the video was filmed while they were on the LM5 tour, and it had a very DIY vlog feel to it. At the end of the video, the LM5 album cover is on a platform and is then thrown out by a boom of confetti with the message "New Era Pending" shown after, which which now takes us into the Confetti era. This era is a little bit shifty as it also blends into their OT3 era, but we're gonna try to make them very distinct. Confetti as an era is known as one of the most interesting ones from Little Mix as it went on during COVID, so the promotion of it was pretty limited, but a lot happened during this era, making it one of their most memorable ones. While recording the album, they wanted to go for a completely different concept from LM5. LM5 had a very strong girl power essence about it, whereas this time around, they just wrote songs that were just fun and lighthearted and weren't meant to be super deep or intentional. They dropped the first single breakup song, and the music video was semi-animated since the planned video shoot had to be canceled due to COVID, and they filmed parts of the video at their homes keeping the original concept in mind. Considering they weren't actually near each other for this video, I think it looks pretty good. They just look like they're having a good time while wearing 80s inspired clothing to match the tone of the song. A couple months later, they released Holiday as a second single, which was also filmed during the lockdown. The entire video was filmed in front of a green screen, and it has them as mermaids and goddesses on a beach. Perry said that filming for this video was a very weird experience as everyone on set had to constantly fill out forms, wear masks, and only a certain number of people were allowed on set, and the girls themselves were not allowed to be near each other, so it was kind of a lot.
2, 3, 4, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Woo!
September to November 2020, Little Mix The Search aired on BBC One. The show was a competition show like X Factor that they formed on, with Little Mix being the judges looking to form the next big international group. Weekly episodes were aired with groups being formed and competing every week on the show, with the winners of it getting to open for Little Mix on their upcoming tour.
Is it ready to go? Yes. So today we are looking for a female vocal harmony group, like a sort of female Destiny's Child vibe. Their voices have to be technically amazing.
Yes.
Obviously, as well as that, their voices have to blend beautifully.
They've got to be the best of the best of the best.
Yeah.
They've got to be able to...
The show did pretty well. It had a lot of positive reviews and led to each of the groups getting their own unique fan bases and followings, with the series having 9 episodes. Promotion-wise, this show was perfect timing, with the final episode of the show revealing the winners to be since September, dropping the day after Confetti, the actual album, was released. What is interesting though is since the show, all of the groups have since disbanded, so yeah. Confetti comes out and it goes number 2 in the UK and top 10 in multiple countries. The album itself had a lot more bright toned pop elements, but it also had a lot of 2000s inspired production. It was a clear mix of Glory Days and LM5 with its mature lyrical content. But there were still some songs that had that signature Little Mix sound. They also low-key dissed Simon and their old record label in the song Not a Pop Song with the lyrics, "I don't do what Simon says." While Little Mix The Search aired, Sweet Melody was released as the next single, and it was the most successful single of the era, going number 1. This was especially important because their last number 1 single was 4 years prior with Shout Out to My Ex. They did a lot of promo for Sweet Melody, specifically performances, and around this time, Jessie was absent from some of the performances they did. It came out that Jessie was taking an extended break from Little Mix things as she was dealing with a lot of personal issues, but no one really thought it was really anything to worry about too much. That was until December 2020, Jessie announces that she was leaving Little Mix, saying she dealt with a lot of emotional turmoil while in the group and wants to take a break from everything. Everyone was incredibly sad when this announcement came out. This was our 1D Zayn leaving catastrophic event. Little Mix then came out with their statement saying they love Jessie and they're going to miss her dearly, but they'll continue to go on as a trio. 3 months after, Jessie announces that she's signed to Polydor Records and that she's coming out with solo music very soon. This confused a lot of people because from her statement, people interpreted it as she was taking a break from the music industry altogether, and for her to come out with music so soon, if that was your intention all along to go solo, the people were just kind of like, why not just say that? A month later, Little Mix releases the final single, Confetti, featuring Saweetie, and the music video has them as male versions of themselves dancing. It's probably my second favorite video from the era. They went so hard on the choreo, and the song itself is just so good. May 2021, both Leanne and Perry both announced that they're pregnant, which was such a beautiful moment that they were able to share that experience around the same time. And Jade was just happy to be the young rich auntie for them. Jade really held it down though, because around the time of filming for Confetti, they were already pregnant, and all three of them were constantly wearing baggy clothing to hide the fact that Perry and Leanne were pregnant, and Jade was just along for the ride. That's real sisterhood, y'all. How they managed to do live performances and music videos while pregnant is just beyond me, because we have to talk about the acoustic version of Confetti.
I'ma let the good things in my life rain down from the sky, drop like confetti.
Their vocals were insane here, and it's my favorite version of the song to listen to. Perry and Leanne end up giving birth to their babies around the same time too, and they looked so happy and joyful. Little Mix then attended the Brits again, but this time they didn't actually perform. They just kind of made an appearance, but they still looked amazing as usual. They also made history because they were the first girl band to win Group of the Year at the Brits that year, which is actually very insane considering they've been the biggest group in the world for 10 years at this point. Please. May 13, 2021, Leanne released her documentary Race, Pop, and Power on BBC, where she talked about the racism and prejudice she went through being in the music industry as a Black woman in the most popular pop girl group in the world. She was very open about feeling the least loved and overlooked because of her skin color throughout her entire time in Little Mix.
Then there was other stuff that started to happen, which made me feel different to the other girls. We did a radio tour. We got off the plane and there were some fans standing waiting for us, and I was the first to kind of walk up to them, and they just walked past me. I went to the other girls. Like, it was so weird.
It's a really sad but eye-opening documentary on Leanne's struggles during her career and the toll it took on her, especially considering the fact that she only ever truly felt seen and loved when they would tour places that had a really high population of Black people, like Brazil. Jade also made an appearance in the documentary where they both discussed their experiences with racism while being in the group and reflecting on how it affected them. The doc goes even deeper into race and colorism in the music industry and the UK, where Leanne talks to other Black and women of color on their experiences and dissects the hierarchies in place that keeps women like them from ever having true superstardom in pop, and the discussions of it being primarily white dominated. I've watched this documentary a couple of times and it really is such an amazing watch, so if you haven't, go give it a watch. I'll link it down below. I think I'm starting to lose my voice, y'all. 2 months later, Jessie makes her solo debut, Boys, with Nicki Minaj, which opened up a lot of discussions on blackfishing and cultural appropriation, specifically on Black culture. All of this led to a public feud with her, Nicki, and the girls, specifically Leanne, which was just really heartbreaking to see, especially considering the documentary Leanne had just put out months prior. I'm not gonna get super into it as there's a lot of videos and content here on YouTube on their entire falling out and the ramifications of Jessie's public perception from it if you want to get deeper into it. The only thing I am going to say about it is that this situation not only changed the relationship between Jessie and the girls, but even how fans view her as well. Leanne and Perry were both killing it outside of the group too, with them both coming out with their own brands, Desora and In a Seashell, that were both very successful. And Leanne made her acting debut starring in the rom-com Boxing Day that was positively received by critics, so things were looking up for all of them. Between Us, Little Mix's first greatest hits album comes out a month later, and it features all of their biggest hits to date with 5 new songs on it. Promotion was a little bit limited as it was while Leanne and Perry were both pregnant, but they still gave us Love Sweet Love, No, and did Heartbreak Anthem with David Guetta, which became another huge hit for them. This album was for the fans and a look back on their time together, as they released a lot of videos on YouTube talking about each album of theirs and what it was like making them. They also put out a lot of fun content talking about their iconic music videos and things they hated about them.
Don't you keep it all to yourself.
Stop the video. Now listen, that corset, I liked it. I don't care. If I hear one more thing about this damn corset, Yes, it was different. Yes, it was unusual.
It's a fashion risk.
They were honestly really funny, and it just reminds me of their early days together. The title track Between Us was released a week before the album, and it's a really emotional song about their friendship and sisterhood. And I literally cry every single time I listen to the song, especially their performance on the Graham Norton show. It's just so good. The music video showed their journey together all the way back from their early days, and it's a really sentimental one for fans. Things just got even sadder because on December 2nd, 2021, Little Mix announced that they were taking an indefinite hiatus after 10 years together, which shook up the internet and fans around the world. I was especially distraught when it happened. I literally cried for days. Y'all are my friends, so I'm sharing this with you. Which now brings us to their final tour, the Confetti Tour. This tour was pretty short compared to their previous ones, with it lasting around a month long. They looked amazing on this tour and were more confident than ever. The costumes were more elaborate than ever before. They really stepped up the style for this tour with different patterns, colors, materials, and silhouettes. In the past, they always had their signature bodysuit or baggy pants with crop top costume, but they completely switched it up for this tour. The tour had a more laid back feel and was honing in on it being more of a greatest hits tour rather than an album tour. They did covers as well as their own biggest hits, and it was just a full circle moment from when they first formed, making it one of their most memorable tours ever. The girls have since signed to different record labels and released solo work, which are all amazing, so go support every single one of them. They deserve all the success in the world. When I was doing the research for this video, I was getting incredibly emotional with how much of an impact these women made on my life and so many others, and I will forever cherish them. They have been left out of so many conversations in terms of icons in pop music, and making this video has made my heart so full, and I had an amazing time talking to all of you about Little Mix and their legacy. I really want to thank you all for coming on this long journey with me, emphasis on long, on one of the most iconic girl bands in history. They better not be lying when they said they're coming back to us, because I'm fully expecting a tour announcement, and this time I will be in attendance, so don't piss me off, girls. Again, thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Cue the emotional music.